Hi, welcome to the British Franchise Association Insight Session. My name's Pip Wilkins, I'm the Chief Executive at the BFA, and I'm really delighted to be joined by a panel of experts today where we're going to be talking about racial and cultural equality in UK business. So first up, let's get some introductions.
Hi, my name's John Kiley. I'm a franchisee for McDonald's in Coventry. I have 7 stores. I've been a franchisee for 10 years, and we have around 800 people working for us.
Fantastic. So not a small business at all?
It's grown and grown. It started with 56 employees 10 years ago in one store, and now we have 7 with an average of over 100 per store. So lots of fantastic people that work for us.
Brilliant. Farah?
Hi, my name is Farah Rose, and I'm the Head of International Development at the Franchising Centre, one of the largest international franchise consultancy companies. We have about 19 consultants working with us in the UK and about 76 offices in international. We normally work with British brands who are looking to expand into international markets, and I've been in franchising for almost 40 years. Next year will be 40 years, and work with well over 400 international brands.
And you're never really in the UK normally, are you, Farah?
I try to be as much as possible, but yes, it's a busy schedule. Yeah.
Fantastic. And Amrit?
Hi, I'm Amrit Dhaliwal. I'm the CEO and founder of Woolfinch. Woolfinch is a home care operation. We provide care to largely older people up and down the country. We've got about 30 locations with about 4 or 5 in the pipeline at the moment. And I used to be a franchisee of another home care operation before starting my own franchise operation.
Fantastic. So I'm going to kick off with a stat, which I have here. So it's the diversity composition of Britain's most powerful decision makers across the public and private sectors, revealed by the Colour of Power 2020, shows that just 52 out of 1,099 of the most powerful roles in the country are filled by non-white individuals, or just 4.7% of the total number compared to the 13% proportion of the UK population. So the question today is all about what we can do to address this disparity and to foster a much more inclusive business environment. So we're going to get started with that as a question. Initial thoughts on that?
Interestingly, I mean, when you look at the stats, it's staggering that there aren't more different cultural people running businesses. I think it's started to evolve. I think it's getting better and better. But as business owners, there should be a real effort to not promote people because of anything apart from ability, but give everyone a chance to really do well in their business. And I think another thing, particularly with local businesses, there's a real need to represent the local area, the local people, the local demographic, and make sure that leadership groups represent that as well. And if we can do that and represent our customers, we're getting a long way to do that. But we've got to include everyone and give everyone the chance, undervalued people, valued people, give everyone the chance to develop in the same way, be transparent to every single person.
Yeah.
I think it's getting better. I think most businesses are really looking at it in terms of developing that talent. We just need to do more and more.
Okay. Farah?
I think certainly the lessons that we need to learn from that is where does this inequality start from? And in my opinion, it really does need to start from the top layer, the top echelon of the management, because you can only really lead by example. If we can attack this particular issue at the heart of it, at that particular level, it'll basically just siphon off and it'll trickle down to the level of middle managers who obviously are responsible, after all, for recruiting some of the staff within the organization. It is a staggering figure, certainly going back to the 80s, 90s, when I was working for a PLC organization, that discrimination was very, very apparent. And I am rather surprised actually to hear that statistic. As John said, I think it's absolutely correct that I think things are getting better, but it's nowhere near where it really should be. And I think for that, there is more about creating more educational programs, highlighting the benefits of diversity, what this diversity can actually bring to the equation, how it can actually enrich the environment in which that, we operate, would be absolutely incredible. And I thank British Franchise Association for taking that step in terms of getting this sensitive political
That's okay,
issue
Farah. We like to take bold moves at the BFA.
Absolutely.
And
Good for
it's
you.
about the conversation and getting that started, Amrit.
Yeah, I mean, I think, frankly speaking, it doesn't surprise me. My background is I grew up in an immigrant community. My parents came over from Punjab in India in the 60s and 70s, £3 in their pocket, didn't know the language and had no one here. And so I think it comes from both sides, actually, just from my own experience. I think part of it comes from a lack of education within commerce. Now, that can be from various different sides. The people from that immigrant background, the first generation kids and so on, won't necessarily have the same references. I've had to learn a lot of those references, and because my parents didn't listen to the sort of local pop cultural music and so on, and so I had to figure that out, and so you still find yourself alienated as you get older, but you need to find your own home within that, and so I think it's educating leaders that are in situ at the moment on how to communicate with people that are from a very different background, who have a different view on soft skills and so on. And I think also educating people that are from that background. So, I do a lot of public speaking stuff. And one of the questions that my dad, who's run businesses and so on, always asks me is, "You're getting paid for this? What the hell are you doing that for?" And it's really sort of explaining that to people that are from the sort of ethnic backgrounds and what have you, as the importance of involving yourself as well. I think that's often something that's missed culturally.
So I think it's really important to have a role model or a mentor, because it's really hard to know how to tackle these kind of subjects. Have either of you or any of you got any experience in mentorship?
Yeah, I can bring up some examples. I think first of all, mentorship sounds as if it's the leaders helping and supporting, but it works lots of ways. I have a very diverse workforce, and I've learned so much of that diversity and different ideas and different dynamics that they bring to my organisation through our people, that they're my role models. But if I give you some examples of role models or being a mentor to someone from my experience, we work with, and I had a need to work with a charity with, I call undervalued young people. Yep. So I approached a youth charity called Positive Youth Foundation in Coventry for a couple of reasons. One, we had lots of issues in our restaurant when lots of young people were coming to them, and we were losing customers because of that dynamic of young people being loud, being a big group. So we were losing families and customers. And I wanted to understand that dynamic. So I approached this charity, and they said to me, "I'll let you speak to our young people, but you have to listen to them. Don't just tell them they're bad people and they're doing something wrong. Listen to their point of view." So we had a workshop with them, and the workshop clearly told me and my staff, because I brought some of our managers, that we were rude and we wanted them out and we didn't want them there and we should embrace them. And it really opened my eyes. So we did further work with them. I did some mentoring work in terms of developing. We're probably one of the largest employers of young people in Coventry, and that gave me the chance to say to them, "Listen, we want to get you work ready. We want you to be respectful. We want to respect you. We want to go on this journey with you." And to date, I think we've taken on about 20 of those young people that now work for me and manage some of my restaurants. And they've come to me specifically and said, "John, can you help me in terms of lots of different things?" And we've done some training with our managers to be mentors for young people as well. And it's made that relationship between themselves and ourselves, that we're together now, and that respect and that opportunity we've given them is really fulfilling for us.
It's really interesting, actually, that I think that whole sort of bit about passing back as well. Once I've both received mentorship and given it. And I've received mentorship, and I always have some sort of coach or advisor around, and I feel like that really helps, because you can, as a leader, you need someone to bounce off. But also what that's helped me with is that you don't have that kind of formal education and the background and so on. So it actually helps you kind of cut through the the CRAP a little bit and really get to the heart of the subject matter yourself and learn. But also it puts you in a position where you can then pass that back. I remember a few years ago, I employed this young chap from a Bangladeshi background, actually, and my team were like, "What the hell are you doing? He's got something on his DBS, so you can't hire him." And I thought, well, if I'm not going to hire him, who the hell
will?
else? Nobody's going to hire this guy. And I got him involved, and I tried to nurture him on a one-to-one basis, and it was such a powerful experience for me as well to think, well, okay, how can we do that on a mass level? And so at Wolfinch, we're really looking at that and saying, well, okay, how do you then develop care workers and take them on a leadership journey? And it doesn't necessarily have to be someone from an ethnic background. It could just be someone from a sort of a more demographically challenged background as well, because I think they have similar issues quite often. So,
Absolutely, yeah.
No, that's fascinating.
I have to say, in my case, I think the mentorship that I received was mainly from some of my colleagues at the franchising center, because they had a vision that was very inclusive. But I think I really agreed with the point that you made. It's not just about having that mentorship, because you can't help other people until such a time that you know who you are and how much you've grown. What is it all about? Yeah. Why is it important to leave some kind of legacy behind and lift as you climb? Really like that statement.
And the thing I like as well, and when, as leaders, we get asked by people, can I spend some time with you? Can I learn from you? Can I ask you questions? I learn more from them than I think they do from me.
So true, yeah.
Isn't it? Because you understand their challenges, what they're going through, that they've had the confidence to actually approach you and say, I need some help. And I think the next question is, that's great. What about the people that haven't got the confidence to come and talk to me and say, or my team, and say, can you help me with this journey? Because that's where we really need to get stuck in. The confident people are great, but how do we?
So how do you build that? How do you build that? The trust and the what people need to be able to find somebody if you're not available. Yeah. How do you empower people to be the people that take the lead within your particular areas?
You have to empower your management groups.
Yeah.
I think I learned from a long time ago that I can't do it all myself. I like to do everything myself, but I can't. So I've got to make sure that the management teams that I put in, who are from diverse backgrounds, will have more reach than I have in terms of reaching people that need our support, have the time, have the confidence, and have that open door that people are happy to go and approach them and work with them and learn from them. So we've done some work with the charity, plus my managers to say, this is what it looks like to be a mentor. And we then, interestingly, you finish a session and you'll get someone talking to someone else and they felt confident enough just to say, no, I want to have a chat with you because of your background, because it's similar from your journey, and it's inspirational. I mean, I'm sure we're leaders, but we're still astounded that people look up to us so much.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That really astounds me.
Whole imposter syndrome piece.
Totally right, because I've come from an Irish immigrant background. When they came over from Ireland with nothing in central London and had to fight for everything, although I think it was a bit easier for me. But it was just that push from my family to say, you need to go out and do it. And I think it's just so rewarding when you can do that with someone else. So it's empowering our managers.
And I think that enables you to recognize the need in others. If we hadn't gone through what we had gone through, it would be very difficult for us to recognize when someone doesn't have the confidence to approach you, for you to actually notice that they might need that support. Yeah. And unless as they say, growth doesn't come from comfort, it comes from pain. And if we hadn't gone through that, and if we hadn't actually done the work that we've done, we wouldn't have been able to recognize the need in others. And I think it's about making yourself available so that at a time when they approach you, they kind of feel comfortable to approach you. And that because you've gone through the process, that you would be able to actually pick them up and lift them as you climb.
And then that spreads. They'll tell their colleagues.
Absolutely.
And it just works and works
and
works.
Bottling those stories, I think as industry, we're worried about it. We're worried about talking about it. And I think we just need to pull that plaster and say it's okay. You know, I think it's important to bottle those stories up and say, well, actually, you know, people from different backgrounds can actually make it. You know, I personally still feel a huge level of imposter syndrome or imposter moments. One of my coaches told me to rephrase it. You know, when you walk into a room and there are people that are, you know, English, that have been really well educated, maybe privately and so on, and you just think, oh gosh, you know, should I even be on this table? Should I be in this room? But I think giving yourself the talking to, and then being able to bottle that story for others that want to kind of follow in that journey, which is really wonderful.
Has that imposter syndrome come from, you know, an experience that you've had at some stage in business that's made you question how you should feel when you walk into that room?
For me personally, and I probably speak for a lot of people that are first generation parents that came over, you just don't know what's going on often. You can't, it takes so long for you to follow what's happening because you have missed a massive section of the journey. So you might have, you know, there might be a reference around the dinner table about a song that everyone heard when they were 8 years old that you just didn't hear until you were 25, and so it means nothing to you, or an advert that, you know, everyone was watching, or a film, and so on. And it's those little things that just put you on the back foot consistently, and over a long period of time, you just what most people end up doing then is saying, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to hang out with those people.
Because it's uncomfortable.
It's uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
But actually, the few people, and Farah, I'm sure you've had a really, you know, sort of phenomenal journey to where you are. But, you know, and the few that do make it, which is why those numbers are so low, understand that you have to go through the pain. And it was a subject that, honestly, I didn't know I felt so passionately about until maybe 6 months, a year ago, where I thought, you know, I've got such a responsibility because, you know, the community that I came from are thinking, well, oh, hold on a second, we could do something like that. You know, I'm doing a talk at my old school.
That's the role model.
Yeah, and
that's the role
You have
model.
to
That
give
is
back.
absolutely. That.
Totally right.
I have to say, I totally concur with what the points that you're making. There are certain elements of our journey that is very instilled in us, in our DNA. I come from the Middle East. I'm amongst a minority group. I'm non-white, and I had to fight within a very male-dominated, very white industry to have a voice. And there were times, many a times, I would say right up to a few years ago, exactly the point that you made, that I felt very much of an imposter attending all of these various functions and seminars and conferences and meetings and whatever. There is a voice at the back of your head that actually says, I don't get this. I am reacting to situations that don't make any sense to me, but I'm reacting from a cultural point of view. I am the first generation immigrant. And I think most of the time I would be very unsure, but I think ultimately it's all about getting to know yourself enough to know that you are good enough, and that you do deserve to have a voice with a lot of humility, and push yourself out of your comfort zone. The biggest advice that I can give to anyone is, for goodness sake, get out of your own way. You are good enough.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. No matter what background, no matter what race, no matter what color, no matter what sexual orientation, you are good enough. And just get out there. The only failure is not trying. And just be put back.
It's embracing it. I think that's the thing. I think that's also, you know, when I was growing up, nobody wanted to own up to the fact that they all listened to Punjabi music at home and so on. They quite liked it, or they watched Indian films and so on, you know, because it was not cool. But, you know, what I realized was, screw it, I'm just going to embrace it, because if I don't, then I'm never going to be true to myself either. And it's just kind of getting out there and saying, hold on, this is me. I am different, actually, and I'm just going to do this slightly differently, but it's going to be okay.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
So I want to touch on unconscious bias. What does that mean, and do you think it's having an impact? Do you think it's a thing in the workplace right now?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, unconscious bias to me is you will always go to or surround yourself with people that you understand and you know and you can relate to, and it's easy for you. And I think everyone does that. Now, I'm lucky, I've travelled the world and I've met lots of different cultures and found out a lot of great things about a lot of different people and how they do things. And sometimes it's alien to them, as you said, when you come over to the UK, it's alien to you.
Yeah.
But if you can just say, right, okay, that's great, but it doesn't work. If you just have a workforce or a group, you don't learn, you don't develop. It doesn't suit the demographic in most areas now because, you know, the areas are changing. So it's this, surround yourself with people that can help you develop your business and develop the type of people that are going to come to work for you, and give them, as we said before, a level platform, full training, full transparency, because they'll help you evolve your business. And then they make sure you train them and develop them so that their bias is recognised and it doesn't get in the way of when they're bringing people into the business as well.
But how do we make sure that the people that are doing, I don't know, recruitment are not bringing that unconscious bias to their decision making?
And it's so true. So a funny story that happened to me last week, actually, I was at the franchise show, and you know, I was there with 3 or 4 largely older but English team members, and you know, I was talking to prospects about Wallfinch and what we do and so on. They're like, "Great, thank you, young man. This is wonderful. I want to speak to the main guy now." I was like, cool.
Hello.
Hold on, I'll go and get him.
Point me in the direction to the older Englishman that I can go and speak to. But you know, and it is quite funny actually. And I think we do need to just, you know, embrace the fact that it's okay. You know, that
Don't take it personally. Not to take it personally.
Unconscious bias, it is a thing.
Yeah.
But where we need to be careful is through recruitment, for example, and franchisee recruitment. So just because somebody's got an accent, you know, let's not write them off. And we've been in situations where I've been in a room with somebody, and because of, you know, my ethnic background, people have felt comfortable to say to me, you know, you're the only franchisor that we've been able to actually have an actual meeting with, because nobody else took us seriously. They thought we didn't have funding because we had, you know, we came from X, Y, and all of that. And it happens. And it's normal, frankly. But what our job as leaders is to say, well, how do we teach people at every level, you know, whether that in my industry is a recruiter for a care worker or, you know, a recruiter for a franchisee, how do we teach that? And you know, how do we unify that learning across the board?
That's a great question. Let's answer it.
Yeah.
How do we teach that?
Well, I asked a question, so I don't want to take the limelight, guys.
I think it's by accepting that those kind of feelings are natural, they are prevalent, we cannot deny it. In my field, in my industry, the way that I look at my international franchising journey is about being inclusive, teaching them how to be inclusive, and offering more and more training, as I said, to people who are working for you. Yep. That it's absolutely okay if someone approaches you and talks to you in a different language. I have to add one comment to the point that you just made, and I was talking about that a little earlier on. The number of times I've been talking to various clients or various potential clients who said to me, "That's really great, but do you think we can talk to your boss?" And I say, as you say, "Hang on a minute, I'll go and get her."
Yeah.
And of course, in the Middle East, I mean, sometimes Middle Eastern gentlemen may not necessarily want to deal with the Middle Eastern.
And that is also part of the issue. And I think the inbuilt misogyny, and I'm just going to say out loud, the inbuilt misogyny in the East in general is quite frankly there, and then you've got that, plus you've got the kind of cultural differences. And so I think, you know, again, for someone in your situation, I think you've got even more hurdles to jump across, and it's quite interesting. But I think, you know, for me, I think the way we really do it is constant education and you know, doing simple things. Let's listen back to that phone call, and often just by listening to it, a recruiter will think, you don't need to say anything, they'll know. Yeah. And because most people innately are not bad, they just don't necessarily know that they're doing something consistently and they've written something off and so on. So I think that's really important, but also for us to make, you know, people from elsewhere feel comfortable. We recently put together startup packs for people that were coming over with sponsorship licenses and saying, well, here's your local shop for the type of grocery that you want, whether you're from sort of South Africa or whether you're from India or whatever it is, and it's simple things that I think we can do that show our staff that this is important. Let's spend half a day, put this together, go and do the research and find out where their temple is or where, et cetera, et cetera. And I think, those sort of things mean that if we as leaders are leading from the front and saying, let's make the change, they will start to do it more and more automatically because they know it's a business initiative and it's important to the organization.
Honestly, sorry, forgive me. Honestly, with programs such as this,
it's so true.
It's all
so
about
true.
education.
It's got to start the conversation. And for me, sometimes it is going to go wrong.
Yeah.
But how do we deal with it internally when things go wrong? If somebody does make a racist comment or a remark, how do you deal with that? And it could be at customer level, it could be internally between employees. What's the process?
Zero tolerance. And I think just going back on the points we had, because I think it's really important that we say how, and I'll answer a little bit of your question. You have to go right back to the beginning and say, we have to go out and search some minorities that we want to bring in. And that's through charities, that's through refugee centres, that's through, there's lots of people coming into the country from Ukraine, from Hong Kong. We need to make sure that they have access to us. So you have to actually start by saying, is our application process open? Is it fair? Does it disclude people? Does it dissuade people? Make that open so that everyone can apply, as long as they have the skills for that job. That's what you want. And then it's training and development for your managers to say, go after talent. No matter where that talent comes from.
It's talent.
Go after it.
Talent, absolutely.
Now, that doesn't answer your second question. Your second question in terms of harassment and racism in the workplace, it's zero tolerance, but you have to have boundaries in place where people coming into your business understand what those boundaries are. Yep. And, is there a language that has to be spoken for safety reasons in your restaurants or in your homes or in your business? That has to be clear as well, so that there's no moving away from that. So everyone feels inclusive. One issue you have when you bring in lots of different dynamic people from different cultures is they have a tendency to stick to themselves sometimes and talk their own language. And then that brings up its own exclusivity in the business. And you don't want that. You want everyone to feel inclusive, everyone to feel safe. You have a zero tolerance, but you have boundaries and you have policies in place that say, and that they're trained on them. And part of our training is we have lots of e-learning and management onboarding where we go through all our policies to make sure that they're really clear about them, because we want an inclusive and a safe environment in our restaurants.
And this might be slightly unpopular, but I think also understanding what is racism and what is ignorance. Because often, actually, again, I don't think most people are racist. Certainly in my experience in life and so on, I think a lot of people are ignorant. But I don't think most people are racist. I remember years ago I went to this old biddy in a village in Oxfordshire, and sort of, she wanted home care and so on, and I was a franchisee at the time, and I turned up, and I was like, had this wonderful conversation. She gave me a glass of water, and she said, yes, great, I'd like to receive care. Phoned the office and said, look, I'd really like to receive care, but I don't want any more big black guys in my house. And and it's but the point is, it was coarse to hear. But she didn't mean anything racist by it. She was somebody that lived in a village, that had never left this village, and she had not had exposure to anybody from a sort of varied background. And that's an education piece. Are we going to be able to teach someone in their 80s? Well, actually, probably, because if they've got someone that they know and they like, they'll change a language. And I think language is so important. And so I think often in the workplace, what happens is it's saying, what language is okay, because language is so powerful and so important. What language is okay for us to use? And if someone has done something, I think as leaders, we've got an opportunity there to nip something in the bud and say, well,
influence,
let's find out why. Is this because you've got a problem with someone from Africa or India or whatever it is, or is this because you actually don't know what you're saying is
But that
inappropriate.
doesn't make ignorance okay, does it?
It doesn't, but it's education, right?
Absolutely. It doesn't make ignorance, well, it doesn't make it okay, but I think ultimately, once again, we go back to the same point of education, education, education. And I just want to bring another controversial point here. And I think to a great extent, as an immigrant, I think it's really important for us as well to realize that there is a balance. There is a balance when we make a choice to emigrate.
Okay.
I think it's extremely important for us not to change our culture and our background and our way of approaching various matters in a forthright way and expect our community to adapt to us. I think when you make that move, you have a duty, you have a responsibility. It's absolutely essential for those who choose to emigrate into another country to learn that they have to add value to the community that have welcomed them and to abide by certain cultural ways, certain business practices, and in that way, we can achieve harmony. I think sometimes there has to be a balance between those who choose and those who are on the receiving end. And as an immigrant, I have had to learn that the very, very hard way because, when I first arrived in the UK back in 75, pretty much 90% of everything that I saw was alien.
Yeah.
I'm Middle Eastern, didn't understand anything about the Western way of life. I didn't understand the language, actually. I went to university, but I would walk in and walk out thinking, oh my God, what am I doing here? I want to go home. But I think throughout the decades and years, I have learned that whilst what I have is very important to me, it's very valuable and very precious to me, and I will use that in order to progress my own career, be a good mom, add value to my community. But I also have to be very respectful of the way that the community in which I am living and working and operating has a degree of tolerance, beyond which you can't really go.
Yeah.
And that has changed over the years. You know, you said yourself, we're much more inclusive than we were. But for me, it's about how we make sure that there aren't barriers, there aren't things that people say, I don't want to be part of, the franchising community for these reasons or the business community. So for me, what do we do and how do we bring that balance and make us as a sector more inclusive?
For me, I think, just to sort of say, I think part of it is, culture often is very much like a franchise model. You can go to any different part of the world and you adapt it to what's around you. Certainly, I think, Farah has probably had similar experiences with that. But I think taking a really hard stance on racism as a whole and saying, well, okay, if there is a systemic issue, which in a lot of organizations, unfortunately, there is, I think excluding them from being a member, for example, we do that even on a care level. So we effectively have a policy of saying, well, if somebody is racist, we won't provide care for them. We won't put our care workers in that position. It's okay to have preferences, male, female, language, and so on. It's not okay to say, I want an English person. I want to, I don't want anyone from a, sort of minority group and so on. It's not, it's not comfortable for care workers either. And I think so just taking a harder stance throughout and actually, making some examples of that, I think will really make leaders sit up and think, that's important now, which effectively happens with any, if we start talking about something, people start doing something about it.
Yeah, I agree. I think just to add to that, and sometimes we can dwell on the negative, you have to really showcase where it's worked brilliantly in your business.
Yeah.
And I think as organisations, we need to do a lot more of that because we've all got fantastic examples where we brought people in from different diverse backgrounds and they've made such an impact to our business. And not just to our business, but to their families and their communities. And they go back and if they're going back to their communities and saying great things about our business, that has to be good for all our businesses, doesn't it? So really highlighting the really good things that are happening.
The wins. And
Totally
it's
right.
what we
Totally
do really
right.
well. It's celebrating the successful people that have really stood out and gone that extra mile.
And sorry, just before we move on, can I just say, I mean, I think, John, that is such a great point because, you know, it's not just the individual that it impacts. It's, you know, often with immigrant communities,
Absolutely,
it is everybody.
Yeah.
You know, it's, you know, even the aunts and uncles. And I think sometimes capturing that, you know, within the marketing piece of it is so powerful because, you know, most people don't know how far that goes. It goes to the village where they came from. It goes to, you know, the kids at school here. It goes to the whole thing. You know, it really empowers a whole community when one person is being able to drive and one person is respected. It's
how
massive.
they feel about that little bit of recognition. It's massive.
Massive.
It's
huge.
Isn't it massive?
Absolutely.
And we've all been there when
Absolutely.
we've had that recognition, and it means so much to us that it just drives you on even more, and then that spreads.
Yeah.
And we should really embrace. We're a long way from where we need to be, but sharing that great good practice is going to be so important. But also making sure there's boundaries where practices are not right, that we have good policies in place.
I really like the point you made about showcasing.
Yeah, it's.
I think it's absolutely, totally concur with you. Because there is so much benefit.
Yeah.
There is such a beauty when you surround yourself by the best of other cultures. Yeah. And we see that time and again, particularly in my work when I travel around to various countries, wonderful countries like Mongolia and North Macedonia and whatever. I've even slept in yurts in minus 35 degrees. But
I can't see you in a yurt. It's just not happening for me.
You wouldn't have recognized me with all the various things on my head. But it is though, isn't it? I mean, it just makes such a colorful tapestry of life. So by emphasizing some of the benefits of having that more inclusive and diverse input of advice, of experiences, of effort, of enthusiasm.
And celebrating international days for those people to make them feel good about what they're doing. And now there's so much we can do.
There is. So on that note, we're going to get a final thought. What can we do? Final thought, Amrit.
I think teaching leaders how to give very specific praise and really making things much more personal, getting to know people, understanding the impact that you have as a leader. I think that's really, for me, the huge thing is where I would like to see more development.
Okay. Two things. One, continue with good educational program in order to teach leaders to help their staff embrace their differences and their diversity. I think we'll go a long, long way.
Continue to train and develop diverse parts of your organisation, because if you can do that, empower yourself, you get better as leaders, your team gets better, but also does your employees who come along feel really good about the organisation they work for. And the second bit is we all need to reach out to undervalued minorities to make sure that they have the opportunity to develop themselves in your organisation.
I think it's all about continuing the conversation, and we'd love to do that with you. So if you do have any questions, please pop them in the chat. Otherwise, you can send us anything or view the BFA website at thebfa.org. We will continue the conversation with you and your help. Thank you. Hi everyone, thanks for joining us today and watching the panel discussion on racial and cultural inclusivity within UK business, sponsored by McDonald's. We're now moving on to the live Q&A part of today's discussion, and we're going to be answering all of your questions that you're sending in, so please do keep them coming in the live stream as we go along. So the first question for today has already come in. We're going to be sending that on, and Amrit, you're going to pick this one up. What do you think businesses, especially franchises, could do to make sure everyone feels welcome and included in the next few years within business?
Thank you, and lovely to be here today. So thank you for the invitation. I think that's a really brilliant question. As a franchisor myself and someone from a diverse background, I think there's a lot of different things that we could be looking at. Yes, obviously having very tight policies, procedures, and really thinking about that from a franchisor level to help implement. But as in on a local level, I think having an open door policy and allowing people to have that discussion with you and developing training. So I've worked with people like Sylvia Stevenson, who's a diversity practitioner, and people, consultants like that, who really understand the situation. She's done stuff with Vodafone and so on, and so very sort of really understands commercial level things. And so what people like that will do is go into businesses from a franchise or franchisee level and say, these are the sort of policies and procedures that we need to do. This is operationally, this is actually what we want to do. So I think the quote of the day really was very much, be interested, not interesting. And I think it's exactly that. How do we develop that? And final point for me is thinking about the leadership team and who is on that leadership team. Is it a diverse leadership team, different age groups, different ethnic backgrounds, different sexual orientation, or is it just a sea of one type of person?
100%. So far, I guess, going on from that, how can we make sure people don't treat others unfairly without realizing it in work? I don't think it's intentional. And what can companies do to make sure that accidental happens less often?
I think it's really, really important to focus on education about some of the personal challenges that maybe people such as myself, coming from a diverse background, might be faced with. Some of the challenges in terms of adaptation to the environment that we're operating, realizing that sometimes we might have a degree of imposter syndrome because we are operating in a very different kind of environment. Sometimes we don't even understand whether we are right. Are we comfortable with it within ourselves? Whatever we're saying, is that the right thing? Is that the wrong thing? So educating people about the challenges of coming from a diverse background. The second part of education is to highlight the benefits that coming from a diverse background may actually bring to the table, such as obviously diversity, obviously the element of adaptability, flexibility, element of enthusiasm. That's the first thing, education. The second element, I think, is about, as Amrit said, is about developing those kind of diversity and equality policies and procedures within the work environment, and having a consistent management system where everybody's kind of aligned in terms of what those diversity policies should be, how should they be implemented. And finally, I think having a real will. It's not just about saying that we have a diversity policy, but actually implementing whatever we've said.
100%. John, I'm going to come to you. So just thinking, I guess, about the tips that we can put in place. So what tips can we give to help other businesses ensure that their policies are more inclusive and mindful of diverse backgrounds in franchising and in business?
Thank you, Pippa, and good afternoon. And I'll compliment Amrit and Cara in terms of what they've said. In terms of policies, you have to have an overarching diversity inclusivity policy that everyone's aware of, not just people who are employed by you at the moment, which is really important, but every new starter that comes into your business. And you keep reinforcing it and you keep talking about it. The second thing, and it was mentioned, is your managers have to be really calibrated in terms of what your organisation expectations are, and how we look after and respect and treat all employees as they come into our business. We need to monitor it. Once you've got those policies in place and managers are trained and employees are trained, you need to monitor it, particularly with feedback from new starters to our business and leavers. Really important that we get an opportunity to talk to the people who leave us about our culture and what they felt. Review your management diversity. Amrit already mentioned. Does our management organisation reflect the type of organisation we want to have and the customers we serve? Another thing is all employees have the opportunity to give feedback anonymously. We have anonymous feedback so we can actually look at it in the round and what's the trends. Also, they have access to all our management, including myself. We call them love to listen chats, where they can come and talk to the franchisee or the manager or the people manager and talk about anything that's brilliant or that's affecting them. And we make sure that any issues that are dealt with respectfully and quickly alongside our policies.
Yeah, I think let's delve into that a little bit more. So, how can we, as companies, encourage employees to report any discrimination without fear of retaliation? You mentioned there about an I can't say the word anonymous, it being anonymous. But Amrit, so how can we do more to encourage employees to report discrimination without it being anonymous? You know, what else can we do?
I think a few different things. One is how are we asking them, and on what platforms? So, one of the things I've found is that often you might ask people to do something, and then maybe 5 or 10% of them do it, and then you might send out a survey on paper, and then a few percent do it that way, and then one on a text message, one on an email, then use social media. So I think the actual medium that we utilize, I think, is something to be thought about, and then really spreading that, educating people on the fact that this is not us wrist slapping, so this is not us, this is us requesting a whistleblow or requesting information. So I think what people need to see is that there is integrity in leadership, and that you will try to do something about it, and that might be, you might be barking up the wrong tree initially, but the fact is, if people can see intent, they're more likely to sort of deliver that content. So I think medium, and also really thinking about, do people believe in the leadership's ability to want to change? And if they think it's just a mouthpiece, or something that they're a tick box exercise, they won't get behind it. But if they really believe in what you're doing, and they think that you're going to try and do something, my experience has been that people are more likely to respond.
I think that's really true. That's about building trust, isn't it, Farah?
It is indeed. One of the points that I wanted to mention here was that at the Franchising Center, we always used to do an employment engagement exercise on a quarterly basis. It's a software-driven exercise where nobody would know who is filling the actual form, but the result would go to the board. And actually, everybody would take a really serious look at how the employees, not so much the employees, but the consultant, the people within our firm, would view their position at so many different levels in different parts of the business, about the way that we manage the business, about the way that we led the firm forward, about diversity, about equality, both at gender level as well as racial level. So I think it is more, as Amrit said, it's more about facilitating that kind of feedback, but then obviously then carrying on from there and actually implementing what you say through a decent kind of management system.
Indeed. John, I suppose I want to come back to, how do you think businesses can overcome the challenge of potential applicants and candidates feeling discouraged to apply for a role because of perceived discrimination?
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, because all employees will look at the type of staff you have. I mean, we're an open restaurant. People can come in and look at the diversity and the inclusivity, hopefully, in our restaurants by the employees we have. But also, I think culture from a restaurant breeds great feedback from word of mouth. I mean, we've got 800 people, and I'm hoping the majority of those people are telling their families, their peers, their friends, that it's a great place to work. And encouraging it. I think also we have an opportunity as employers to go out to the wider markets and go out to those sources of areas where we can get employees and bring our staff with us. And we do quite a bit of that, and go to areas where we can actually tell them about our organisation, what we do, but also let our staff tell them about what we do, and feed it through that way. So I hope, and I'm seeing it in lots of companies, that word of mouth is probably the biggest recruiter, because people listen to their friends and colleagues, and will act upon that.
It's a really, really good point. We've got another question come in. So how can companies help more people from different backgrounds get more important jobs in leadership? We just touched on that, didn't we, about having more people from diverse backgrounds. So Farah, what do you think we can do to encourage companies to do more?
I would say set example. Set example. I remember when I was working at the Arcadia Group, we absolutely had this particular policy where we had to actually set example of people from different racial backgrounds having those kind of senior management position. Now, that to me sends a very, very strong message that reinforces in the minds of applicants or people who are already working within the organization that there is a very, very real opportunity to actually reach those kind of positions within the company. So I think set the example by actually doing it, by bringing more diversity onto that senior position within the firm.
Yeah, I think it comes down to just doing it, really. I think also not the problem with the problem with this topic is that what tends to then happen sometimes is that you hire someone just because they're diverse and they're not good at the role, and then everyone loses, faith in the process. So I think what we need to do is be open-minded, amongst candidates. I've often been concerned over the years myself, where I've kind of put myself forward for something and thinking, well, actually, I'm probably the only diverse person on this list of candidates, and I'm not into the same music. I don't watch the same stuff on TV. My references are different. Does that put me at a disadvantage? And I think the person on the other side of that table, if they are aware of that and try to remove those biases, then we're having an open discussion, and then they can say, well, okay, Amrit is diverse, but also actually good at the job or not. And so we'll then, and we're talking meritocracy, as well as, being very open to the allowances that you make for the diversity. We're not saying recruit somebody or take people on in roles because they are diverse.
John, what about you?
Yeah, I'll touch on those points as well. I think we're all trying to get into our organisation to a point where diversity doesn't even come into it. It's that person that works for us that shows the skills to be able to get that next promotion and get that next development. And I hope that in our organisations that you don't have that conscious bias in terms of diversity. What you do is you have a level playing field that means that everyone in your organisation has the chance to learn, develop, push themselves. And we've also got to, we also realise that not everyone wants the next step. People are quite happy to go to work, do their jobs, but the people that do have the encouragement, have the open door, have the push from us, but also the pull from them to make sure that they put themselves in that right position. And then naturally, hopefully, the right people will come through. Now, if we're finding that, it's all from one culture or one background, that goes back to your policies and checking on that and making sure that you are representing the wider areas that you support and making sure that that's done. But it wouldn't be great if all of us everyone had the chance just to develop based on their own skills and their own opportunities to move forward.
100%. Okay, next question. What tools or ways do you use to find out if employees are happy and support your local communities to create a positive impact on racial it's missing a word, but so that they feel that they're treated fairly when it comes to race and cultural equality? Anyone? Which one? John?
Yeah, I'm happy to go. I mean, I'll reinforce what we do in terms of we do anonymous feedback from the stores, so everyone has the opportunity, and we encourage it, good and bad feedback, so that we can do something in terms of promoting the things we do brilliantly and looking at the things that people aren't so happy about, making sure that everyone has access to management at all levels, including myself. And interestingly, and it was fortuitous, I was at a charity this morning working with St. Francis Church, who are more refugees coming through the doors now, and talking to them in terms of opportunities, not just for working for McDonald's, but working for lots of other organisations, and making sure that they felt they had a chance, they had an opportunity, and giving them coaching in terms of getting ready for a job, no matter where that is. What does an employer look for from anyone out in the market, and making sure that us as a brand is recognised for doing all the right things and looking after our staff, getting people ready for jobs no matter where they're going to be.
Fab and Amrit?
I think looking at the data is one of the things that we've started doing quite effectively. So having the same survey from a franchisor level, it is, and having the same survey going out to all of the care workers and clients and so on, ideally at the same time, is particularly useful. And then using that as benchmark data to say, well, okay, first of all, as a network, this is what's going on. So we know network wide, we need to spend time trying to train the leaders within the network to do more of X. And then on a local level, you can say, well, actually over here in this particular region, there is a problem around, Y. And so we can then get involved in a much more bespoke way. So I think, from a franchising perspective, really going back to the top of the conversation, it's really sort of understanding what the problem is and where the problem is, because there's some things that you have to do as a franchisor to say, well, actually, we can do our job better. And there's some things that franchisees need to do to say, well, actually, you need to get in line with the rest of the network. And it's just constant learning, but you need information to drive that.
Fantastic. So we have one final question, which I think will be a good one to get a view from everybody. Can you share how you educate your teams about different cultural backgrounds? Farah, coming to you first.
Obviously, in the sort of work that I do within the international arena, I actually have to deal with a lot of different cultures. And I have to, in a sense, have to be a bit of a chameleon, really, to be able to adapt to my environment. As you know, I don't actually work with that many people within our firm. So fundamentally, my position is very much kind of going out into different cultures. So I can really only speak on the basis of my own experience. And I think from that point of view, I think for me, it's all about understanding the cultural nuances, having enough respect for the way that they operate in that particular environment, understanding some of their sensitivities and some of their kind of emotional nuances, because part of the job that I do is I have to be aligned. And sometimes it's not very easy, but I'd like to think that, with experience of dealing with so many different nationalities and cultures, that even I, at my age, am learning something every new day. So in my case, it's very much about going into other cultures and adapting myself to their culture and having a very, very open heart in terms of what they're saying, how they're saying it, what is it they actually mean, what is it that they're implying, because sometimes words cannot actually tell you exactly what they're trying to say. So it's probably, in my case, it's slightly the other way around.
Thanks, Farah. And John, how do you educate your teams?
We've got a really diverse background of employees in our organisation, and I think part of it is, first of all, you've got to have your standards in terms of what's expected from every employee in your business, and that will include policies in terms of diversity, inclusivity, and the nuances around that, and how that affects people in the job they do. Once you've got that, a lot about education, as Farah said, is actually talking and discussing and having meetings together, and trying to make it a little bit more informal in terms of people mixing with each other, understanding each other. You hope at some point they become friends, and they learn. I mean, I've been invited to news and weddings of people that I would never have had the opportunity to do before, and I'm seeing that in my restaurant. So it's giving it that inclusive culture in your restaurants, so that people feel safe, they feel respected, and they build those communications and those friendship groups, etc. themselves. And then you foster that and make sure that if anything is getting in the way of it, that people have the opportunity to come to talk to you and say, the way you're doing something is affecting me this way. And sometimes we might not even understand it, but giving them a chance to tell us and acting upon that if we can do that.
Thanks. And Amrit?
Right. Echoing everything that Farah and John said, but also I think trying to create the empathy. So, we do a lot of stuff with international staff, and really sort of sitting down with the recruiters and onboarders and saying, well, how would you feel if you came here and didn't know anything about how to sign up with a GP or how to start a bank account or anything? So really kind of making things step-by-step guides and so on. So creating that empathy, but also through fun. The other day we had a management meeting, And one of my key players found a Punjabi song and said, "Oh, we often break into a stretch, in a management meeting just to kind of keep everyone awake." And they were like, "So how do you dance to this?" And so it was light bulb, sweep, sweep, and everyone's getting involved, and it becomes comical. But in that you're talking about where that comes from, and the culture and the farming background and so on. And so they really got a very rich understanding of something that just sits with them, but they can empathize with it because they've learned it through fun.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. That's all we've got time for. Thanks to Farah, to John, and to Amrit. But most of all, thank you to all of you for watching and for all your questions and comments. Apparently, particularly on LinkedIn this afternoon, you've been very active. And for us, that's a testament to the power of inclusivity within the world of franchising and indeed in the broader business community. Franchising as a business model thrives on that collaboration and community, and we recognise that true success in this field is only achievable when we embrace and celebrate diversity. That's why these sessions are designed to be inclusive spaces for open dialogue where we listen, learn, and share experience. Let's go forward and continue with the positive changes, learning and growing within the world of franchising and beyond. For more information, please head over to the BFA website, www.thebfa.org, or if you have any more questions, please email them through to press@thebfa.org. Huge thanks again for watching, and thank you to McDonald's for partnering us with these insight sessions, and thanks again for watching. Many thanks.